So, are you curious?
Curiosity Codex. I am your ardent enthusiast, Kyle Olson. For this week's episode, Mandy and I decided that we'd just talk about writing and let the chat go wherever it led. We'll talk about process, outlining, weird ideas, and taking your family's drama and maybe making a movie out of it. But first, we'll get into the strange shared brain space that happens when you have a co-writer.
Chapter 9. Who Let Me Out of the House?
Interior recording booth night.
Well played, my friend.
Two independent screenwriters meet and decide they want to talk about the craft. Okay, so and so we ended last time. We started talking about wanting to talk about writing, which is of course one of my passions as well. So screenwriting. So when you, I believe when we talked about it first, when you first started out, you collaborated with someone else. Well, you did your spec script. We talked about the Office spec script.
Yeah.
And then you collaborated with other people. Now I'm interested in that. Yeah. Just sort of as a gateway. Did you start writing it by yourself first and then you started collaborating with other people, or did you was the first things you did collaborating with other people? Because I haven't actually never written with anyone else.
Yeah. The first thing I did was by myself.
Okay.
And I will say that it's like pulling your fingernails out one by one, pretty much. Like, I mean, it's wonderful because you have all the control, and it's awful because you're always in the void of the blank page and the unknown and like, what am I doing? And this is terrible.
Yeah.
Whereas, the reason I think, I had written a novella.
Oh, okay. How did you find that as a process? I've written a novel as well and went, ooh, this is not for me. Like, I have a finished book, but I'm like, yeah, it's just going to sit quietly on my shelf over here. Like, I'm not. It took writing a novel to find out I'm not a novelist.
Yeah, I actually loved it, and it came out. It was a magical kind of process because it was really one of those. I knew I wanted to write. I didn't know what to write. I basically sat down at a blank page and just went, I don't know, and decided, okay, if I sit down and I write blah, 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 that's what I'm going to do. And then I imagined this picture, and I saw a little girl, and she was laying on her bed, and she was looking up at her ceiling, but then it wasn't the ceiling, it was the stars, and she could see them and communicate with them. So that's where I started. I had that image, and I just kept writing from there and sort of feeling it out, and it ended up, it was really one of those fun stories where you go, I don't know where this is going. And then as you follow it, you're like, oh, this is where it's going, Yeah. So
you finally, when you get to the end, you realize what it is you're writing about.
Yeah. But and actually I remember I was in a noodle shop on 7th Avenue with my friend Jennifer Fitzgerald, and I'm like, I'm writing this thing, but I don't know how it ends. And she's like, well, doesn't it end like blah-de-de-blah? And I was like,
isn't that amazing?
Oh my God, that is the ending. And she cracked it for me.
Isn't that amazing how people can do that? I have a novelist friend, and he's like the master of that. Like I said, oh man, I'm 3/4 of the way through this horror movie, and I realized I made the monster essentially too powerful. I can't stop it. Like I can't do anything about it. And so he read what I had done, and he's like, oh, well, clearly you're doing A to B, and then it circles back and then goes right back to A. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh God. Don't you love it when that happens?
Yeah, that's you're right. That's exactly what it should be. Oh my, yeah. It really takes someone else to sort of look at the whole thing and show you. Yeah, there was a structure to this. You were just too lost in it to see.
That's the best part of collaboration, is somebody else can make you look like a genius. I'd written this novella and I wanted to adapt it as a movie. So I did write my first feature by myself.
Okay.
And then the way I collaborated the first time on a movie was my roommate at the time had written, she had this idea for a fully improvised movie, and then she had taken that idea and started to kind of script it, but she was a little locked up, right? Mm-hmm. And we were roommates, so I was like, ooh, and for whatever reason, her story just sparked in me. Like, I loved her characters, I loved the tone of it,
Mm-hmm.
And it was an idea about a woman who, a a dying mother who wanted her children to throw her a living funeral.
Oh, okay.
It's a great movie. So we were sort of, I was just sort of helping her with her thing, which was really fun for me because when it's not you, right, you're like, oh, well, this is so obvious, right?
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I would help her by like sending her questions, like answer these questions about these characters. And I went full deep on the characters, like, you know, let's figure this out. Let's figure that out because this is the pieces. This is going to go here and da-da-da. And I was sort of helping her. And then I was helping her so much and we were just giddy and talking about it, having such a great time that she was like, do you want to write this with me? And I was like, yeah, is that okay? Because I feel like I am writing, like we are writing it together. So we got very lucky with that because we ended up having this really good writing relationship. Yeah. And we got a good script out of it. Like, it was a good story. We wrote the heck out of it. And we actually got like a producer. Oh, wow. And we got an agent from that. And it happened the way that all the people say it's supposed to happen, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So going back to that time period, like living together and writing the thing, how did you go about divvying up the work? Like, was it like you would do like, oh, I'm going to write this scene. Okay, I'm going to write this scene. And then you write and then sort of exchange it. And then you like make changes and notes based on that, or?
The way that I think it works best, and different people work differently, like when I'm writing alone, sometimes I'll do stream of consciousness writing because it's more fun. And somehow there's something, I love that there's several movies that I've written completely stream of consciously. And I didn't know how they were going to end. And then they end great. And I don't know if I had sat down to outline it that it would have come up with something like that, you know? Yeah. That said, if those scripts are not perfect the first time out, and so few ever are, because you have not done the structural work.
It's really hard to go back in because what is a load-bearing scene? Because you start pulling something out and suddenly the whole thing crumbles.
Exactly.
I feel you on that one.
It's so impossible to rewrite those because you're like, oh God, you have to go back and basically outline, which is what you should have done in the first place. But with the writing with another person, I find that you have to outline the thing really. What Jennifer and I did is we outlined so detailed. Like, even we had lines that were funny that made us laugh when we were talking. We would write those down. Every story beat, every like, here's the arc of this scene. Here's the next scene. Then let's go to here. Like, we outlined it like crazy. And then, well, the way that we did it actually, because this was just because when I write something, I like to like live, breathe it, get into it. So the method that we had developed was, well, that we just said we would do, I wrote the first draft and then I passed it to her and she wrote the second draft. And, you know, she was free to make any changes or cut things or move things. You know, she would let me know. But for the most part, like she would go in and rewrite dialogue that didn't work for her. And then, you know, and then we had to learn to work that way. And it's, you know, you have to sort of, just because then what we would do is then the third draft we would get together and that's when the tough, it's either amazing and you go, I love this chunk, let's keep this. Or it's I really think it should be no, I think it should be an and, you know. I can't even tell you, there was a scene about making eggs that I swear to God, we spent an hour and a half going, no, he has to ask her how she likes her eggs, not what kind of eggs. And she's like, but they've been dating for 3 years. He would know that. And I'm like, no, that's the point is she's never shared that information with him because it's so intimate, you know? So it can be that sometimes, you know, but it's also, you have all the fun and the laughter and the knowing that you don't know yet, but it's so much easier when you have a collaborator to know that every bad idea is a good idea because it's not about, like, someone says something and you're like, well, that's not, you know that that's not it. But it makes you go, well, what about this? And then you throw out a bad idea and they know that's not it. But there's no shame in that. And there's no spiraling off into, oh my God, I've lost all of my talent and I don't know what I'm doing. It's a springboard. You're finding it together. And like, what's fun about that too is, you know, I might come up with a fairly decent idea and then she might come up with a fairly decent idea that if we had been alone, we would have put that down and been like, that's good, right?
Yeah.
But because there was this other person going, I don't know, can't we do better?
Yeah.
Then after you've spent all this time trying to figure it out, when you find the thing that makes you both go, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
There's this great kind of, it kind of vets your stuff before it gets to the page, because it doesn't go on the page unless you guys are both like, yes, But I think it takes a tremendous amount of trust, because you're always going to have an idea that you fall in love with that your partner is like,
Yeah.
And it's really hard not to want to just like grab somebody by the throat when that happens. No, I mean, of course you're going to be like, how can you not see that my idea is so perfect? It's the best thing I've ever, it's the best thing, it's the best idea ever in movies ever. What's wrong with you? So that could be a little tough. So, but that's what I mean. Like, you get this trust. Like, I co-wrote a project with Mandy Kaplan, right?
Okay.
And it was so fun, and we really found our rhythm. And then we went back recently and started working on it again.
Yeah.
With her, she has a co-writer that they've worked on another TV show and that they're developing. And so he's coming in and we're all working together. And it was so funny because our first meeting, I was like, oh my God, this is like riding a bike. I've written so much with her that I have that trust, right? When she says, no, I don't like that idea, I don't freak out and go, this is going nowhere, this is a disaster. I go, oh, that's right, we don't like each other's ideas. And then we find the idea that makes us both go, oh, our writing process is really a lot of like, I don't hate that,
Okay. I say, having listened to the Man Cave, I sort of like, I feel a little sympathy for him, at least in those first couple of days of like, you guys are friends, right? Like,
oh my God. No, you know what's really funny is what's happening in that process. And I've never worked in a threesome before.
Right.
That's like, it's my first time. But no, what's interesting is they actually are at opposite ends. And because I also have like a director brain a little bit, it's kind of fun for me to be able to sit back and go, he said this, she said that. Well, there's something right in the middle. I wonder if that could work, Yeah. It's actually a really nice kind of fun. It's fun to have an odd number, right? Because if two people like it and one doesn't, it makes the other person think a little bit more.
Yeah. Now, are you able to separate screenwriter brain from director brain?
That's interesting.
Like when you sit down to write something, are you specifically like, this is a thing that I could direct, or this is a thing I just want to write? Or do you just like story is story is story?
It is.
Or is it by project?
I think story is. That's interesting. Okay, so I think that story is story.
I think I just asked you like 4 questions at once. So
yes,
take your time.
That was a lot. So initially it's always very hard for me to separate out the writer part of me. Like, I am rewriting things right up until they're shooting.
Also, it never shuts up.
It never shuts up. Yeah. But I do, once the writing is done and I'm like, okay, this is the script, we might still change some things, but in a weird way, I sort of split in my head and now start working with the writer. Okay. But knowing that I'm not going to fuss over things the way the writer does. Because as the director, I know, well, it's going to be loose. Like, I know how I want this to feel. I know what actors can do. I know I'm going to know if it's the right thing when it's happening. Like, you give it a little bit of space where the writer's trying to be like, this is the movie on the page. And the director knows, well, no, this is the script, but the movie is going to be made in the next 3 parts of this process.
Right.
So the script is just the beginning, an incredibly important first part that is so hard to get just right.
Yeah.
But it is the first part. So I think and directing other people's stuff, I love doing it. If it feels like something that I just so get. Sometimes I'll watch movies and be like, I would have loved to direct that. I just saw on Amazon the I Want You Back.
Oh, yeah. That's on my list. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. It's good.
Yeah. And that's a movie that I think I would have really liked to direct.
Okay.
Like, I got it. I got the writing. I got the feel of it.
Yeah.
I really liked what the director did. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, this feels like something if I had read the script, I would have been like, yes, this is in my wheelhouse. Yeah. This in a way, has my voice or my specific skills as a director. I know what I do best.
Right.
And this is people talking in funny ways and quirky characters and building a love story. And that's, I can do that. When you're looking at something that you're going to direct, that's what you're looking at. But when you're writing something, for me, it's like, do I get so jazzed about making this thing that I haven't seen yet? For me, it's always about, I've never seen anybody do that.
Yeah. Or you know, there's also an element of spite where I was like, oh, I've seen this story done badly. I'm going to show you how to do it right.
That's very good motivation. It is. Now, when you started, how many screenplays, did you just start writing screenplays? Because I know you started in theater.
I haven't written a ton of screenplays. I think I've written like 3 or 4.
That's a ton.
Well, yes, I mean they take, but exactly. So like I'm sort of in screenwriting. I'm a baby writer. Like I've written way more like podcast scripts and that than anything else. So for that, I'm just starting out during that. Actually, I would say the probably thing I've written, but podcasts that I've written most of the stage plays I've probably written the most, and then screenplays sort of at the latter.
Yeah, I was asking because the format of screenplays and how to communicate something visually without it being like so anal and every little detail. And, a lot of writers make the mistake of writing the direction into it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's a tough balance, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially with a lot of these, what I want to write is sort of, is like exciting and action and that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, but I don't want to like fight choreograph the whole thing because I know that would really make people like, yeah, that's not your job, man. Like, but at the same time, I remember reading an article in a screenwriting magazine about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And they said in the stage direction says they fight. It was like, okay, so there are different ways of going about this. You have your big I don't know, Jonathan Hendrick would do like a whole paragraph of it, or like beat for beat, and then sometimes you just have they fight. So it's like, okay, there's a wide array of choices out there, so you don't ever feel like you need to do it exactly one way. You just have to do what's right for your story.
Isn't that liberating? I mean, I will say that while it's very cliche, but they all say, learn the rules so that you can break them.
Yes.
Because that you have to do the rules first and then you can really lend your own voice. Like I kind of do, I'll write emotional beats and, like a line between if a character hears something they don't want to hear, my next action line might be shit. Right? Like,
yeah.
And whoever's reading it, I don't have to say, she looks disappointed. She suddenly gets a look on her face like, oh no, I didn't know that was going to happen. I might just put shit, which is in the character's voice, but you read that and what the character's doing, right?
Yeah. I started, one of the people I really like reading scripts from is Shane Black, and Shane Black is fun because in his descriptions, he'll sort of like almost write notes to the production staff. So it's really funny, all the stuff he do. And like, so I started doing stuff like that. Like I'll say, and then the ship explodes with the biggest effect we can afford. Like that kind of, like we know what's going on. Like you and me. Like,
Yeah, that's funny. You can crack yourself up and play and have a good time.
Right.
Because there is a difference, with scripts that are screenplays.
Right.
I'm sorry, with, when you're writing something everything is meant to be read, right? But novels are only meant to be read, right?
Right.
So that's that's a different toolbox entirely. But with screenplays, that's the thing that you have to sort of find your balance of you got to stick to story and structure and character. And one of the first challenges that I had was I just assumed that people knew things like I did or just saw things like I did.
Right.
And I wouldn't fully describe a moment or extend it or really be clear about if characters were wearing something important or doing something important. It took me time to really get that, to really go for that. So because I had to remember people weren't in my head, but also the fact that someone's reading it, whatever's the sexiest, coolest thing for somebody to read is also the best choice, even if it's not important to the production team later. there's things you put in for the reader that the director knows they're going to do their own version of that anyway.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't get too in love with a tweed jacket with checked pants and that's not your job.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're going to make a joke about it or it's something about unless you're a person who's a fashion maven and you've written a movie about, and that's your signature thing that all your characters have these fun, funky, character descriptions.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like British writers always have a certain there's a certain tone and voice to British screenwriters that you're like, that's so witty and fun and erudite.
They're drawing from a different set of references. When you sit down, are you directing as you write? Like, are you already thinking like this is what I'm going to like? If you are writing something that like your intention is to direct it, are you already putting stuff in there as notes to future you, or are you doing this like, well, I want to direct it, but I might not. So you're trying to have it be like a full and complete screenplay, or are you still like, no, I'm gonna hang on to a couple things.
No. I mean, it depends on where you're at in the process. Mm-hmm. So I think that every writer, in a weird way, is directing it as they write.
Sure.
Because you're storyboarding in your head.
Yeah. And choosing what you show and what you don't.
Yeah. You're seeing, yes, you have to you are leading the person through the story. So yes, I think I'm a stronger writer in that way than I am even a director. Like I think the storyboarding for me really does happen in the writing process.
Okay.
So I think that, and then a director comes in and interprets that. And then the director, like when you write something, you storyboard it, quote unquote, with your words.
Right. And
you take somebody through the rhythm and the journey, and hopefully they get the tone and the feel of the movie, and hopefully they have gone on the emotional journey that you intended. Because to me, that's always, whenever I'm lost, I'm like, how am I going to shoot something? Or is this scene doing what I need it to do? The question is always, well, how do I want the audience to feel? What's the intention? How do I want them to feel after this?
Right.
And so I try to, whereas writer, you have a theme of a movie that you're trying to service, right? Like for my last movie, it was The Truth Will Set You Free, right?
Oh, okay.
So that was sort of a theme that I was working with, and everything was about honesty and truth and where each character was in that journey in the movie.
Did you have that with you from page one, or is it something as you were going along that you figured out and then sort of kept as your mantra?
I had that with me as an idea as I was outlining it. There were a few ideas that I wanted to explore,
right?
But I really wasn't sure. That was a movie. This is the one that I just shot, Just Plus None, that I was really like, I knew that I wanted to have a feminist, like I wanted to have a female character in a rom-com who starts off single and ends up single, but happy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. That she
already has a log line. I'm already hooked.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's like, just that she's, and it's tough because it's a real internal, like, right. She doesn't get the guy in the end.
And you're fighting the genre. Like the ruts in the road, like has already been like, no, she has to end up with the guy. Like you're already sort of like pushing against what that is. So that's an interesting struggle.
Yeah. And for me, like a lot of the things in my life that have been huge, were like light bulbs that went off, right?
Yeah.
Where something happens and it changes you in a way, and you'll never do it the way you did it just now.
Yeah.
But you're also the way you've done it in the past, but you also haven't had a chance to try out the new way to do things. Does that make sense? So I think that's, So, God, why did I start talking about that? The themes.
Right.
There were these ideas that I wanted to play with, and then I had these ideas about character and relationships that I wanted to explore.
Yeah.
And then I started with those things, and then I put a construct on it because for me, it's always easier to know a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I love movies that have it's a wedding. It's a 3-day wedding.
It's a reason to get all the people together who ordinarily would not be together.
Yeah. It's a 5-day road trip. It's So I put up the framework, and then I know I have the characters and the relationships. I always start with the character where they are at the beginning and then where they are at the end.
Okay.
Because every character needs to have some arc.
Okay.
And so then I build what goes in between. I sort of always know emotionally where these characters are at the beginning and emotionally where they are at the end and what they've gotten to. And then I have the framework of the movie, and then I start building the in between. And then as I'm shaping that, if I'm lost, I go back to my themes. Like, what is the message I'm trying to get across? What do I want the audience to feel at this point?
When you are writing and you sit down and you've come up with your character and you're going to sit down and start writing that person, do you cast them in your head? Like, do you already thinking like either someone you know or like a celebrity? Like, do you go like, oh, I'm going to have Sandra Bullock in my head as I write this thing down? Or do you just like, is it just the character is the character and you just sort of let them become whoever they want to be?
I have done it both ways.
Okay.
I have done it where, like, for whatever reason, although not whatever reason, she's a genius and amazingly talented. I always want to write for Melissa McCarthy.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Or Kate McKinnon.
Yeah.
You know, these, or Kristen Wiig, like, there's these women, Maya Rudolph, like all these women who do awkward, totally almost macho, like just trying to get it right, and they just screw up royally, and it's great. Like I always think of them they're sort of like muses for me. Like any character, if I'm like, well, who is this person? If I imagine Melissa McCarthy, instantly it becomes clear, right? Yeah. That's one way to do it. The other things that I do, there's two other ways.
Yeah.
One is I will base it on someone that I know very well.
Okay.
And I don't know. I'm sure this is why we're storytellers, right?
And also why a lot of people don't trust writers.
Well, I try to sort of hide. Yeah. I'm never mean-spirited, because the reason I'm writing about you is because I'm so madly in love with you.
Right.
Right? Like, I love the little quirks and nuances of things, and I just believe everybody is so great even when they're really flawed, and we're all flawed, right?
Sure.
So it's this really fun thing for me to sort of take a real person and their real quirks and things and put it into a story. If it's going to be a real, like, hey, you know, a specific story, like, you remember when your dad, you know, became a hooker and your mom was uncomfortable with it, whatever. Like something like that, if it was very specific to their story, I would always ask permission, to be honest. Yeah. And if I didn't feel comfortable asking permission, or if I wasn't really writing their story, then I would take the idea of it and turn it into something else, metaphorically.
Yeah, there's a family story, which I'm not going to relate here, that from the extended family. So it's like basically someone I know told a story about someone that I'm distantly related to, and it's such a fascinating story that I'm like, God, I've always wanted to write that. But at the same time, it is really their story. And it's like, if I put a thing up there, they would look at it and go, hey, wait a minute. Like, even if I change characters and name stuff too, like it's pretty clear.
I can address this actually, because this is something, if it depending on what the subject matter is, right?
Sure.
You'd be surprised how many people actually really want their story told. Like, they're not opposed to that. I think it's always if you say, I'm interested in writing your story.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm thinking of it like, right? And here's why. Yeah. Because I think it's so interesting that you went through blah, blah, blah. Or I think it's fascinating how this, and there were all these other people left behind, right? If you frame it in a way, and also, like, think of this, right? Okay, so you have like a single friend who, like, you know, has weird voices in her head and just a crazy dating life, and, you know, and she's a train wreck. But then you say, hey, I want to write about your last boyfriend, but like, imagine it like Fleabag, like tonally.
Right.
I want it to be like Fleabag and fun and thing. Like, your friend will probably be like, oh my God, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, like, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you sort of put it in the context of, like, you know, the story Little Miss Sunshine or The Wrestler, or what, you know, whatever the story is, if there's a sort of comp, and you sort of explain, I want to make it a cool, like, indie, like, or whatever, like a real character study. And I want to do it because there's other families who've also gone through this. And not to make it sound, not as a sales pitch, but I mean, as a genuine passion thing, unless there's somebody else already writing that story, or unless they would die if it ever came out, you'd be surprised, because storytelling is how we heal. It's something our society developed for a reason.
Right.
And that's you take ownership of something as a writer. Like
True.
I would never ask somebody if I could write their story or write that story unless I knew that I had a killer take, that I got it so well, and that I could service it really well in a way that doesn't disrespect them or exploit them, but that shares the story in a way that is like complex.
Yeah, I've had moments where I'll take a piece of something where I was like, oh, that I've never really thought about that or experienced that or saw that before, and then I'll sort of build out around it. But it's a genuine moment, even if it happened to me, if it didn't happen to me, and then sort of like construct a story sort of to build around it. Like either it's the inciting incident or it's what we're all building towards. Oh. And because it feels, and then that feels like genuine because it's a real thing.
Yeah. Do you have a list of things, like ideas, funny, weird things that happen, or lines that people said?
Oh yes. I have like a little catch-all thing of like, I don't know what that is, but like it's something.
Oh, you're good. Where do you keep it? Like in a notebook or on a Google Doc?
I do it in Google Drive because I have a Google Drive thing because I don't trust notebooks. Like because there's just too many things can happen and go away. So I like to have something that's non-centralized. So if like any one device goes down, it's still out there. But yeah, so every once in a while I go in and look at it and just like peruse through and be like, oh yeah, what was that about? Or like a weird turn of phrase, or like even something like a random set of words that just happen to be on a wall, like of names, whatever. I'm like, oh, what would that be? And I just hang on to it and keep it there.
That's great that you do that. I think I did that. I've done that before, I'm sure, but of course I have no idea where that stuff is. I mean, actually, it's probably on my laptop. I would jot down ideas and stuff, but then I would never go back and look at them.
Every once in a while, just to like go, oh yeah, like I actually do have some pretty good ideas. Like I like, sometimes I go through and try and add more to it, but sometimes I have just like title and a log line and that's it.
Oh, okay. So there is an Instagram account that my friend turned me on to. I think it's Free Movie Ideas or something.
Oh, okay. That's fun.
And that's what they do.
Oh,
they
nice.
Basically just do, these are free movie ideas, and a lot of them are terrible, but like what fun for the writer to be like, there you go. An alien gets lost in a desert, whatever it is. And and he does it. I think he or she does a new one, or they do a new one every day. I have no, that's the thing about having a partner too, is like if you need someone to set a schedule, if you're meeting someone to write a movie, it's a lot easier to sort of say, sorry, I have a meeting, I can't, as opposed to like, yes, honey, of course I'll help you with your gymnastics because I was just sitting here working on a script. You know what I mean? It's a little, and also like I find that, I have ideas for days, but it's the structure. Like you just talk about like, the catalyst, the turning point, all that stuff. It's so helpful to have someone going, well, what is our theme? What is our final image? And our, to help sort of mold that stuff,
Yeah. Do you always write chronologically?
Oh, that's interesting. You mean, are all of my stories?
No. Like if you have the outline built, do you go like, oh, okay, today I'm going to write the wedding. Now I'm going to write the meet cute. Like you just jump around to it, or do you actually just like from page 1 all the way to page 90?
I usually do that. But if I'm working with a partner very often, I will say, hey, I'm going to take a stab at the restaurant scene because I have a good feeling, an idea. And again, if it's outlined within an inch of its life, I can feel safe really going there with the scene because I know what's supposed to happen in the scene. Yeah. I think if it's a loose outline or you're still finding it, which I'm guilty of as
me too.
Yeah, when I'm writing something on my own, I don't vet it and go as detail oriented because I'm like, work it out in the script. And I like working that way, actually. It's a nice, happy medium because I do find things when I'm writing that are really fun and surprising and the characters really start to wake up. So, But yeah, I actually don't usually go out of order.
Okay.
Because I like all the surprises that come along the way. And
yeah.
And I don't know I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but in terms of, how movies, sometimes you have a second act kind of like, what the hell's going on here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? The first bit of a movie is always like, I have this great idea. Uh-huh. And then the second act is either like killer because they've really worked on it, or it's like, and then I'm not really sure where it goes. Yeah. But then at the end,
and then a bunch of stuff happens, and then something terrible happens. And then...
Yeah, and then it starts to pick up this momentum, and how many movies have you watched that you're like, I didn't love it, but then those last 20 minutes, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like the writing process is very often like that for me, where I'm like, whoa, kind of. And then
I get that too when I'm in a movie and I'm getting super bored. I'm like, oh, we must be getting near the end of Act 2 because things are terrible. They're getting worse. Yeah, okay, all right. Just get to the bottom so we can move back up to the top. Come on.
It's so hard, isn't it?
Yeah, Act 2 is the worst.
Yeah, it is.
That's the thing. If I focus any of my attention on, that's what I'm trying to do is like figure out how to make an exciting Act 2 because I've seen so many terrible ones.
And that's where things like, the bee story or the Blake Snyder, is that his name? Save the Cat, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I like that book so much. It's so inspiring. But he talks about the fun and games, right? The promise of the premise.
Right.
And those two phrases, for whatever reason, for me, like help me deliver ideas. It gets you out of the specifics of your story, the plot, and what needs to happen next. And it kind of helps you back up and go, wait a second. If I'm watching a movie about, two women who start a business stalking their exes, what's the fun and games of that? What are some things you would see that feel fun about that? And then it can help you, generate that stuff.
Yeah. Or deliberately taking a left turn where it should be right. It's like the heroes are confronting the villain, and the villain just goes, yeah, you're right, I surrender. And you go, oh, wait. Ooh, what happens now? Like suddenly you're awake and the audience is awake because this is not the way things go. Like, yeah. But at the same time, you got to justify that because you can, because I've seen a lot of left turns where you include like, oh, you were just out of ideas.
Right now,
because they just swerve right back into like where it originally was going. And I was like, oh, so no, you had something interesting there.
You must outline within an inch of your life then, because
no, I don't. You know what? I don't outline at all. I know, and I'm working on that. That is one of my flaws that I'm trying to get through. Is like I keep in the same way. Like I'm good at writing notes about my ideas about stuff, but I'm really bad about putting notes in it. Even though in my head I have a pretty strong idea of like, and now here, and now here, and now here. But one of the things actually I talked on the podcast about plots versus plants. Like basically, are you like George R.R. Martin talks about how he's a gardener. He like plants ideas and then he goes and sees what's ripe and what's harvest and you go like that. And Neil Gaiman is a pantser. Basically, it means he just like goes, kid wakes up in a graveyard and both of his parents are dead and that's where he lives now. All right, let's see where this goes. And like he just goes along and then by the time he gets to the end, oh, that's what the story is. And then he can just go and smooth it over. So I mean, whoa, holy cow! I mean, those are like obviously titans of the industry, but they're different philosophies. So I'm trying to figure out where I am in that. So I have a really strong idea in my head of like, I'm going to go A, B, and C, but I like the weirdness in the middle. So I like going into a scene and be like, okay, they want this. That person does not want them to have this. What's going to happen? And then I just kind of sit back and let the discovery happen in there. So I know the scene. I just don't know what's going to happen in the scene. So that's sort of where the fizz comes for me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I wish I'm working on getting better at outlining or trying to like, it's sort of like I'm retraining my brain because different projects require different things. And I'm writing a screenplay now that is heavily plotted. I need to make sure that it all makes sense. Yeah. Because there's all these turns and stuff along the way. And I need to do it. So I'm like training myself to be able to like, okay, put it down so that you have a spine so you can go back to it and don't just rely on your stupid brain.
Well, I think with something with twists and turns, that's where I feel like, don't you have to have an outline? Because to your point, if I'm in the scene and all of a sudden the villain's like, haha, I'm actually the good guy.
Yeah.
that's a fun twist, but also, well, now what?
Yeah, exactly. And now what? That's the thing. So
Right.
that either like propels you forward, like, oh boy, what happens next? Or stops your story flat. And
Right.
welcome to Act 2. You're not getting any farther until you figure out what's going to happen now.
Right. But if you have known from your outline that like,
Yeah.
well, I know it's going to be the neighbor girl next door, so I know I need
Yeah.
to blame a lot of other people, right?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. More
So
red
that's-
herrings and
Yeah, that to me feels like I secretly would love to write anything like that. Like the whole twists and turns thing. I would love that. But I can see where to your point, if you're like, I know there has to be an obstacle and he's going to run into this villain and he will win. He's going to defeat this villain, but I don't know how yet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That to me feels like something you wouldn't have to outline. If you're like, I know I want it to be in a batting cage and I want
Sure.
there to be his pet ferrets,
Right.
And you just can leave that and then move on in your outline because, like they fight.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. Yeah.
that's something
exactly.
you could just sort of be like, I'm going to make a cool scene here, but I'm going to wait till I've got the juice.
Right.
go
And so
back.
you talk about like you go, oh man, how is he going to do it? Oh, what if he had trained ferrets? And then you go, all right. And then you like go back in your thing to page 15 and go, and one of his hobbies was training ferrets. And so
Right.
and by the time it gets there, you've
Yeah.
reverse justified. That's the dirty little secrets of writers is that you come up with a good idea on page 90 and then go, oh, wait, let me see that all the way through. And then go, and then you
gotta
look like
set-
a genius.
That's right. Although, I love that stuff. That's one of
Yeah.
my favorite things to do is like set up a little Jenga puzzle that it all connects and it all pays off. But then when you get to editing, it's really interesting because you're like, oh, that scene, I don't know if that scene really works, but I can't lose it.
Because it has
Because-
a major narrative thing. in it.
Yeah. Because she
Yeah.
says this thing, which then ties to this thing later.
Yeah.
And I got to have that in there. So it is, but it is a sign of, it is very satisfying.
How do you know when the screenplay is done? I think I've asked you this before, but now we're purely talking about like that you've gotten to the point where you're like, do you have an innate feeling, or you're just like, I can't do anymore?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
And to be honest, I can't do any more right now.
Right.
Like, because you're always going, like I have that movie, The Dying Mother, Throwing a Living Funeral
Right.
movie. Oh my God, Kyle, we've rewritten that thing 20 times. We have written it for, like now she's a lesbian, now she's straight, now they're a different, now they live in Santa Fe. What? They're
Yeah.
from Connecticut. Like we have gone over that movie tirelessly. And here's what I'll say. It's a sign of a good story is that it has that many lives in it, right?
Yeah.
If it's character based, for me anyway, like if you're going to go back and you're just adjusting the shading on it in order to do it for production, that will be endless because until it gets produced, it's not done. It's
Right.
still a script. But that said, I think it's like if you are just at the point where you're like, I don't have any better ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I have taxed myself. I have given it to my friends and colleagues and mentors and people who don't particularly like my writing.
Yeah.
And I've asked for feedback and I've taken notes and considered them and then I've implemented them. And then I sent that out to people and I had table reads. Like once you've done the due diligence of making sure that it's not just a big ride for your ego of how brilliant you are, that you got 104 pages or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's, to me, I always think my baby's so pretty. And I really, right. I hate hearing that my baby doesn't work for you. Like,
Yeah.
I hate hearing that.
Yeah.
Which is why I have to ask 4 or 5 people, because if 4 out of 5 say the baby is crying too much, I will then listen to that,
Yeah.
So that's, to me, it's you've gotten the feedback, you have considered the notes, and you have answers for the notes. And when you have good, strong answers for notes that you know you're going to get, that you've considered, and it's
Right.
either I fixed that or I've chosen not to fix that because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like that's fine too. So, but it's when you don't have better ideas and you do, if you keep working on it, you're just going to go so micromanagey.
Yeah.
You're just changing words here and there, but you're not really, heightening it. to make it like undeniable,
So now you've talked about your first experience in a threesome. Are you screenplay monogamous? Are you a one screenplay woman?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, you mean do I write one project at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were gonna say like only write with one person, and I'm like,
no.
I love writing with multiple people. It's so much fun. But do I write one thing at a time?
Yeah.
Yeah, these days I do. I did not. I used to write 2 or 3 things at a time.
Okay.
But these days, yes, because it's, to find the time
management. Yeah.
Yeah, time management and the focus of it. And I really, I get so obsessed with it. It's one of the ways I find the next thing that I'm going to write is I see what catches fire,
Yeah.
And then if I'm going to bed thinking about it and I wake up thinking about it and, so it kind of has to be one thing. Unless, here's what I will say. If I've written a first draft and I have to just get my eyes off of it so I get a little bit of space,
Sure.
I'll take some time, get notes, feedback. Then I will sometimes have a second. I'll go back and tinker with the rewrite that I know I needed to get to or wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Or start noodling on whatever the next thing is going to be. I will do that.
Do you dream in screenplay? Like, do you?
It's interesting.
Like, have you ever? I say this because I have recently.
Wow.
I've been waking up with my characters talking to each other, and I'm like, oh, really? Like, you couldn't wait till I'm at the keyboard. No, you had to start doing this now.
Oh no, I don't know that I dream it, but that moment where you start to wake up. And the images start to flood in, and I fix things all the time as I'm waking up. Yeah,
I have found that there's an inner there's like the shoemaker and the elves. Like when you go to sleep, brain's still working. It's like like trying to like look at your story and stuff, going, and there's still a problem here. We got it, and then just waiting for you to open your eyes to go, oh, by the way, I've been working on this. Now I have to tell you.
Yeah, meditation. If I'm trying to meditate, sometimes things look like. Like it comes in and says like me next, which I don't mind.
Well, sure. I mean, it's part of the learned insanity of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I would say I'm sort of now thinking of things in terms of what my writing was like pre-COVID and post-COVID, because that really does a number on you too. I used to be really good at figuring out how long something would take me. So I would say, like, someone would say, oh, can you do this thing for us? And I'll be like, okay, I can start writing that in 2 weeks because I'm writing this thing and now I'll be done then. And I can start on that one. And then like in a month, then I have to start writing this one because I want to have it done. And then like COVID sort of like just screwed all that up with quarantine. And then suddenly I never have any time by myself to write. So I have to like figure out how to write when other people are around. And I can't go to the places I used to write. And so I'm not quite as good anymore. So I'm finding my timeline is not quite as right anymore. But are you pretty diligent in terms of what you can accomplish in terms of in a day, in a week, in a month? Like, do you have a set goal, or do you sort of like you have to do the specific, like, I want to have something done by the end of this week, this month? Yes.
Once I do that. And I'm such an idiot. Like, I really should do that more often because I'm pretty good about sticking to those. If I go, but here's how idiotic I am. I'm like, I need to have the movie written by March 18th, right? And then around like March 4th, I'll be like, I really got to outline that movie. Like, even though I've given myself 6 weeks, like I'm such a procrastinator, but I work well under deadline. And I think everybody does, to be honest. Like we're in post on this movie and we just had a meeting.
Yeah.
And like, we're all like, all right, deadline's April 1st. No, we all know the world's not going to stop spinning. There's no hard and fast, Netflix isn't waiting for it yet that they know of.
That's
but,
Call Ted.
we set that deadline because otherwise we're all going to be like, I guess I could work on that movie. We all work great under pressure.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the best things I ever heard about that was if you need something done, ask a busy person.
Yeah.
Because like they're the ones who are getting stuff done, as opposed to somebody who's like sitting around. Then they'll just, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get around there. But like someone who's got 100 things to do, yeah, 101, sure, fine. Like I could do that for here.
Yeah, yeah. I admire people who have that. Like, nope. I write between 11 and 1 every day or whatever.
Yeah. I
admire that. That's not how I do it. I usually like scare myself into, oh God, I said I would have it done. Like I try to get people to give me deadlines. I have a writers group that meets every 2 weeks. And
virtually?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not all, we don't all do screenplays. One woman's writing a novel, the other one's writing plays, the other one's doing a TV pilot. So we're all different. Yeah. But like there is a certain like, it gets me a goal where I go, oh, I got to show up and know what I'm working on. And
you
really
guys show each other your stuff? Or you just talk about what you're working on? Okay.
Either or. Like if you have pages, great. If you don't, like, I've been working on a movie. So, post, right? I'm editing a movie. So I haven't been doing a lot of writing because I'm really trying to focus on that and get that done. But the writing that I'm doing is, I have this idea, I'm going to talk it out for 15, 20 minutes. Okay. And then they'll go, oh, that sounds like this or that, And some of the ideas you're like, oh, this is it. And some of them you're like, that was fun. Next. You just sort of see. But then if you set a deadline, like I said, oh, boy. I got a couple things I'm like, if I just set a deadline for those, I bet I could write them really fast. Yeah,
I do the same thing. I have a sort of mental deadline in my head. But part of it is that the new shiny. That's what my friend Lori, who's a novelist, has that thing. She's like, you're writing something and like all of a sudden, new shiny idea comes along. Like, oh, look at me, I'm new, I'm sexy. Like I could be anything. And you're like, but I'm working on but new shiny. So you sort of can use that as a motivation because like, the sooner you finish what you're working on now, new shiny's waiting for you. Could be anything. It could be the best thing you've ever written. Right around the corner.
That's funny because like I wonder, like, I guess some of the ideas I go, but unless there's really more there, like unless it's pouring in.
Yeah.
And I've considered really, really gone deep and gone, what does this look like? What is this, a movie? Is this a TV show? Is this just a sketch idea? Like it takes such momentum. It has to be such an undeniable idea for me to really like get in there because then I become obsessed and that's how I write.
Okay.
Like I want to go away for 5 days and I just want to like, and I need the whiteboard. I need the bulletin board. I need all the stuff.
Yeah. See, I really want that. I've never done anything with note cards or bulletin boards or any of that kind of stuff. It's all just in my head. Like I wish that there was a virtual way to do that or whatever. Yeah.
There is. Final Draft has that function. I don't use it. I don't know how to use it. I tried to use it because I was like, what a great function.
Yeah.
I can't figure it out. So I just use the regular old fashioned. And you can just, it's just scraps of paper on a floor. For me, that's if I'm trying to figure out plot, like if I have an idea about a story, but I'm not really sure, then I'll do that whole thing about like, oh, well, I know I want her here at the beginning and I want it here at the end.
Right.
Here's 7 ideas that could happen in between that could possibly lead to this thing. And then I'll just like literally stick them around as possible scenes.
Yeah.
And then they get pulled away or changed or, as new stories come up. But that's how I start to flesh it out.
I would recommend to you, this is the first time me recommending to you instead of you recommending to me.
I like it.
There's a program I use. It's called Zoho Notebook. And the nice thing about it is it's free. It's sort of like Evernote or OneNote or that kind of stuff, but it's much more like creative friendly because inside it and it's also non-centralized. So like when you do it, it saves it to the cloud. So like, if your computer dies, it's the other way. But they basically inside the notebook, they're creating individual notebooks, and inside those notebooks, you can have notes. So you can have like one notebook, and I basically have a notebook of screenplay ideas. And you click on that, and then inside there are a bunch of different screenplay ideas, and you click into those, and then you can have all your notes and outlines or whatever you want to do inside there. But it's a way of having it nested, so you can like look at your stuff and go, all right, what do I look at today? Oh, here's my TV scripts. Here are my screenplays. Here are my all these things, and then you can go in and see sort of arrayed in front of you all your different sort of ideas, and you can dig into, so even just to, like you were talking about, to look at them all in one place, as opposed to, little notes all over the place. Not what you're talking about, but in terms of like all your ideas and projects and which things you're going to do.
Do they present as like sticky notes, or
they present as like, well, if it comes up as like it first starts to look like a book, so like you actually can design your covers as you want to too. So I actually went and made custom covers, so I have like one, and they have like these cool blue scripty fonts across them that says screenplays and TV pilots and all these things, and then the book opens up, and inside there they look like sticky notes, and then you click the sticky notes and they open up to full documents. And then you can, and they're all colorful and stuff too, which I really like, having a bunch of different colors. So when you open up your screenplay book, there's 15 different colors on each one, and then the top of them has the name of what it is, and then you can see the first couple lines of it too. It's really nice, because I basically have taken, every time I have an idea or a scrapper or something like that, I put it in there. So I have it all sort of in one place. Like you can open up a couple of them and they're just nonsense. They're just like random words and phrases and pictures, and you can even bring in clips and whatever else you want to. But sometimes they're actually detailed. I've even copy pasted whole screenplays and scripts into them, so I have like sort of a backup.
Wow.
I mean, they don't format exactly correctly, but like I like having them all sort of there, so I can like bring up like, oh yeah, there they are, and I can sort of look at them and noodle around a little bit without actually formally rewriting.
Do you go back and noodle around old stuff?
Oh God, yeah. I wish I didn't.
Oh wow.
Every once in a while, I'll bring something up. Usually, it's just like, oh, I want to make sure this is up to date in format, and move something around, and I'll go, oh, that's really bad. And it's not usually like whole new scenes, but I'm like, oh, that's stupid. Who would say that? And so I'll go back through and change it. So like, I really should have like, this is Frozen as of 2007. This is where it was. But no, every time I go in, I can't stop.
I know.
My rewriting, like I said, to go like, let me just fix a little. This has been annoying me. And
I know.
That was a bad joke. I'm just going to take that out.
Well, it's hard because, because your writing gets better and things change and things become dated, and jokes that were hilarious 3 years ago are now like, oh, no, you can't say that. I mean, it's, it's really, really tough. And of course, you will always want to be putting your best foot forward.
Right.
And, that's really tricky. But, that's also like what I'm learning, too, from this process of having an actual movie made that, screenplays, you give to people and they give you notes, but I don't know, that's a different process on some level, because it's still in flux, right?
Right.
The permanence of having something that's like, this is a choice that I've made and this is now done, Yeah. Even in that, where you're like, I have, this is through the ringer and I stand behind everything I've done, is still going to get such a myriad of responses that you kind of have to think about that for your screenwriting as well. That you go like, listen, this is just the first part of this process. And it's some people are going to love that joke. And some people are you clearly loved it at one point because you wrote it.
Right.
So there's an interesting kind of like, I mean, you can watch your movie on Tuesday and think you're a goddamn genius. And you can watch it on Friday and be like, who let me out of the house? Like, no, I can't show anybody this, right? So I think it's you kind of have to keep moving forward, because there is no perfection. There is only you service the ideas and get out of the way. Like, I think I'm trying to learn that. I'm trying to learn how to be a channel for these ideas. Right. Like be the willing laborer who loves the idea and is willing to service it and see what I can bring to it, but then get out of the way. Yeah. And just, do your due diligence and then be done with it, which is why I think deadlines are great. And I think like end goals are great. So you go, listen, my goal was, and I did this one time and it worked great. My goal was, I want to write the script and I want to give it to 10 people. And that's it. So that then you write it, you give it to 10 people, and you might be like, and if nothing happens, that's fine. I'm moving on to the next script. depending on how many years you've put into it or whatever.
Well, sure.
But think
Have you
about
ever
that.
had an idea come to you that you're like, oh, I am not who this was intended for? Like, have you ever like received a message from the great beyond to be like, oh, I'm not the person. Like, I don't know where this was going to go, but I intercepted it. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
And what do you do? What do you do with it?
Like if I know somebody, if I think of a great idea for a horror movie,
Yeah.
and I just know I'm just too of a wimpy scaredy cat to write it.
Yeah.
I have one of my best friends from high school is a great horror writer.
Ah, okay.
And so I'll offer it up to people and be like, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And if it sparks for them, great. But I also find, oh my God, I can't tell you how common it is that you're like, oh, I have this great idea. And 6 weeks later, you're like, oh, there's a book out with that exact story. Or
oh, the story well. Yes, yeah. I know that very well. And we're all dipping out of the story well. Who
Yeah,
gets
we're
there
all in
first?
a zeitgeist. Yeah. It really is. It's your birth. And that's kind of a relief if you have a million ideas. It's sort of a relief to be like, oh, thank God I don't have to write that one.
Yeah.
But that said, I'm constantly trying to do different genres. Like I wrote a kids movie that I loved, and I wrote wrote an action comedy with Mandy, and then I'm dying to do some sort of twisty, turny, like drama heisty thing. I'm dying to do that.
Nice. That's one of my favorites. That's what I'm working on right now. Twisty, turny, heisty thing.
So much. It would be so much fun. I don't think I'm the person to do it.
Yeah.
But it would be fun to try. I mean, like, what a fun exercise. Anything that gets you writing and strengthening your muscles, I think is great. Yeah. Unless you're like, holy crap, I just got an agent who loves my rom-com, and now I need to go, and now I need to have at least 2 more great rom-coms, Yeah.
Because there's no easier way to make your mind misbehave than to tell it what to do. Like, no, we're writing this. Oh, but have you thought about vampires? Like, oh no, come on, man. What are you doing?
Where, like, along with deadlines, and this is something I'm just coming up with, so maybe this could be, I know people do this, but I love this idea, and I always forget to do this. To have a goal or a thing that you get once you've achieved your goal. You know what I mean?
Yes.
To like work backwards. Like I keep thinking about, well, what do I want at the end of this movie, right? I want it to be on Netflix, or I want to go to Sundance with it, or I want this. So then I go, all right, back up. What do I need to do right now to make that happen? Well, I need to get the rights for all the music.
Right.
And having that sort of like little cherry on the sundae, like, well, I did this so I could give this script to 5 people. I already know the 5 people I'm going to give it to. So, and then I get to take myself to dinner. I don't know, whatever it is,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Bribery.
Yeah, I know. I used to buy myself something at the end of the thing. Now I sort of like, I feel like I've evolved to the point where like having written is enough of a reward for me. Like, oh, I have a finished thing. I can set it aside.
That's true.
Yeah, so
that's true.
But I think, but for starting out, I highly recommend like buy yourself something stupid. Like get to the end when you finish the thing, whatever, like a piece of clothing, an action figure, whatever it is that like gives you joy, and that you would never like rationally like, no, I can't justify that expense. Well,
but also
as a reward, do it.
But also, even if you are an experienced writer and you love writing, to keep yourself from going away from that, like, I'm going to go check out how the real estate market's doing, or that other idea I have, or let me just go work on this other old script that I have. Like, to really be able to stick with something, sometimes I find that makes you dip back into the well.
Yeah.
If you find yourself wanting to go do something that's easier.
Because that's why we do this, because it's so easy.
Or feels easier at the time.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where we're going to stop the conversation for today. If you'd like to hear more of Mandy's voice, she's got her very own podcast. It's called The Mand Cave, hosted in collaboration with her friend, Mandy Kaplan. You'll find it wherever the finest podcasts are found. Thanks so much for listening. This has been the next chapter in the Curiosity Codex, but there are still many pages left to decipher. We're part of the True Story FM family of podcasts. Find out more about us at truestory.fm. Our theme music is Intrusion by Severed Personality, aka Kevin MacLeod. The voice of the Codex is Vicky Hall. Find her on the web at vickyhall.squarespace.com. And my name is Kyle Olson.
The Codex is closed for now.